you ain't got a fucking chance.
On paper, the Punisher One Last Kill already has a lot going for it. Jon Bernthal is back. The first official trailer is out. It is being framed as a Marvel Television special presentation and the first one since the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. It premieres on Disney Plus on May 12, 2026. Reinaldo Marcus Green directs. Jason Momoa returns as Curtis Hoyle, and Bernthal himself is not just starring but co-writing and executive producing. That is all real weight. It tells you Marvel is not treating this as disposable side content. They know Frank Castle still means something to people. They know Bernthal's version still has cultural force. And they know the audience for this character does not want a sanitized placeholder. That is the good news. The more complicated news is that the trailer also suggests Marvel may still be circling the same psychological territory it has already mined several times before. Frank is tormented. Frank sees ghosts. Frank is torn between grief and violence. Frank tries to step away, then gets dragged back in. Frank struggles with what the skull means. Frank becomes the Punisher when the pressure rises. If that sounds familiar, it is because it is familiar. We have seen versions of this arc in Daredevil, in both seasons of Netflix's The Punisher, and even in brief form in Daredevil, Born Again. It is effective material, but it is also material Bernthal has already proven he can play in his sleep. The question now is not whether he can do it again. It is whether doing it again actually deepens the character. That is where this special either lives or dies. Because Frank Castle is one of the hardest anti-heroes in mainstream comics to adapt honestly. If you flatten him into a cool killing machine, you lose the tragedy. If you make him too self-aware, too hesitant, or too morally tidy, you lose the terror. The best versions of Frank are always built around contradiction. He is exacting and unstable, protective and monstrous, clear-eyed in action and shattered in stillness. Bernthal has always understood that split better than most actors who have touched this role. The problem is not performance. The problem is progression, and that is why this trailer is so interesting to me. It looks like Marvel knows it cannot simply reintroduce Punisher as a generic blunt instrument. The footage leans hard into Frank's inner damage, yes, but it also points toward an endpoint. The title itself, One Last Kill, sounds terminal. Not peaceful, but terminal. Like Marvel is trying to position this special as a threshold, not just another day in Frank Castle's cycle, but the moment that finally locks him into the version of the character the MCU wants moving forward. That matters even more because we already know Bernthal is coming back in Spider-Man, Brand New Day. That changes how this special reads immediately. It means One Last Kill is not the end of Frank Castle. It is the end of a phase, a transition piece. A brutal bridge between the fractured, haunted version of Frank we have been watching and the more fully weaponized version who can step into another hero's movie without carrying the entire story on his unresolved grief. If this special works, that is what it should accomplish. TechRadar and other outlets are already openly framing it as connective tissue to Brand New Day, which makes the transformation question impossible to ignore. And I think the trailer quietly points in that direction. The most telling detail is not the fire, the blood, or even the skull. It is the framing. Frank is not being presented as a man simply reacting to trauma. He is being pulled toward function, toward mission, toward choice. Marvel's official description says he is searching for meaning beyond revenge when an unexpected force drags him back into the fight. That wording is important. Beyond Revenge suggests the movie is at least trying to move him past the most repetitive version of his pain. If Frank can find a reason to keep going that is not just rage on loop, then suddenly the character becomes much more dangerous and much more useful. That is where Curtis matters too. Jason Momoa returning as Curtis Hoyle is not just a continuity nod. Curtis has always been one of the few people in Frank's orbit who can remind him of the line between damage and self-annihilation. If this special is really about Frank crossing into a more permanent Punisher identity, then Curtis is exactly the kind of character you would need around to make that transition feel like a loss instead of just a cool upgrade. Frank becoming more decisive should not feel triumphant. It should feel costly, and Reinaldo Marcus Green is a smart creative partner for that. Green's work has often been strongest when dealing with men carrying pressure, identity, and moral abrasion in their bodies. Pairing him again with Bernthal after We Own This City makes sense. This is not a random assignment. It suggests Marvel wanted a version of Punisher that keeps the bruised human texture alive even while pushing the character deeper into action territory. That balance is difficult, but if they pull it off, One Last Kill could become something much stronger than a stopgap special. The Mon-Nucci speculation is also worth watching. If the teaser imagery really is pointing to her, then Marvel may be signaling that Frank's world is about to become more overtly comic-booked without losing its grime. That is a delicate transition, but it could be the right one. Bernthal's Punisher has spent years in urban realism and trauma-first storytelling. Bringing in a figure like Mon-Nucci would test whether the character can survive a slightly pulpier MCU environment without breaking. He probably can. That is the benefit of Bernthal. He makes Frank feel so physically real that even larger comic book elements have a chance of sticking. I also think the special presentation format helps more than people realize. Punisher is not really a character who needs endless table setting. He needs a target, an emotional wound, and enough room for escalation. A one-hour-ish format can do that brutally well if Marvel stays disciplined. It can strip away franchise padding and force the story to function like a shotgun blast, which is exactly how Brad Winderbaum previously described the project. For a character like Frank, that economy could be a major advantage instead of a limitation. So where do I land on the Punisher One Last Kill after this first trailer? I think it looks promising, but not because it is showing me something completely new. It looks promising because it seems aware that repeating Frank's pain one more time only matters if that pain is finally leading somewhere. This special does not need to reinvent Bernthal's Punisher. It needs to complete a transformation. It needs to make the haunted, reluctant, self-divided Frank Castle we have known feel like the version who can step into Spider-Man Brand New Day without apology, hesitation, or another long identity crisis. That is the mission, not just more punishment, finality. And if the special really delivers that, then One Last Kill could end up feeling less like another side chapter and more like the moment Marvel finally decides what Frank Castle is supposed to be in his universe. That is what makes it exciting. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments. This is where these kinds of films come to life. Until the next story, stay curious, be critical, keep your eyes on the screen, and remember, every film you haven't seen is a new film.